I guess I'll just start by asking, sounds like one of the craziest jobs I can imagine, flying into fires. So I guess my first question would be how you guys got started in this kind of work?
I had no other choice. No, I originally had wanted to go to the Air Force and do that sort of thing, but the recruiter never called back. So the Army was smart enough to that recruiter scoop me up real quick, and then, but I knew I wanted to fly, so you know, just did my packet and whatnot in order to go to school, and got lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time many times in my career, both at the flight school board, to get hired after our first deployment as a full-timer, and I've just been super blessed.
Nice. And
yeah, I did the same thing. I joined the Army about halfway through college, because college got pretty expensive, and my roommate wanted to join too, so I hopped in it with him. And I came back to Stockton in 2004. Joe was my first Chinook instructor,
nice.
and part of our support to the state as a National Guard unit is supporting wildland firefighting in the summers or whenever we're needed, once emergency has been declared by the governor, and probably have the best job with the biggest bucket under the Chinook.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you guys
nice.
have both done combat. I was wondering, how does flying in combat compare with fire? I'm sure there's some similarities and differences there.
Okay, yeah, I'll take it then. Yeah, I mean, the similarities would be that, like, we're using, at least the Chinook, at its capabilities, right? Like, exactly like what it's made for. And so similarities being that you're always high, you're always heavy, right? And you're always, a lot of these fires are in high altitudes, or the higher, elevations and whatnot. So, you're always working at the maximum capabilities of the aircraft. And I think Ben can agree with this. We typically tell the guys coming into this for the first time, like, hey, you might have deployed before, but fire season is really one of our most dangerous times, one of our most dangerous missions that we do, even more so sometimes than the combat stuff, just because of the amount of traffic that's out there, and the limited visibilities, and you're working at your maxes and everything else. So
Yeah, it sounded like the conditions, especially on that flight you did, I think it was Saturday night for the Creek Fire. I was reading all the different stories on that, and it sounded just insane. Do you think you could kind of run us through what that whole rescue mission was like?
So, yeah, sure. When we got the call, there was a lot of unknowns, right? There's a lot of information that nobody knew, right? And so we launched knowing that there were 30 people. It turned into like 30 families, but we didn't have any of the info for the fire yet. So when we took off, we had to get a lot of information from the Sacramento ECC en route. And it kind of worked out. A lot of it was a coincidence, where we show up right at cutoff, right when it's starting to get dark, and all the other traffic in the area, so that is leaving, and so that kind of got rid of that risk, right? So we got a little bit of information. We could see the fire. We could see it with big old head on it, a big old column of smoke as we were approaching it. Luckily, like, all of that stuff was still coming like straight up, so it hadn't come down into the valley, so the visibility was still pretty good as long as you were outside of the active fire. It was all getting kind of sucked up into the middle still, but it was starting to get dark, and so we, Ben knows how this is. You're in that transition period between light and dark, and you're kind of flipping up and down to see when it's best to stay with the goggles down. We flipped them down, like, okay, guys, it's much better with the goggles on. So we all went to goggles, and then, like, you could just see everything kind of light up. We don't really do NVG firefighting, although, that's kind of talked about, but we don't do that right now. But so seeing all that up close under the goggles, it was super bright, but you could see so much better. There was so much more definition at that point. We circled around a little bit. It was funny. We were we're spending a lot of time converting coordinates because people like to give us coordinates in a format we can't use. So, so man, we were circling this little apple ranch and just like, okay, convert this. Okay, put it in there. Okay, convert this, you know, and none of them, they were all like 5-7 miles away from each other, and none of them were in the place that we thought that we were going. Like we knew Mammoth Pools, but then when we contacted Air Attack, man, it was just like, yeah, I think you're going here. I think you're going there. And it was just really a lot of confusion, a little bit of, you know, misinformation going on because nobody really knew why we were showing up, what we were doing. So they were just trying to do their best to help, but they didn't really have all the information. So once we verified with them that, oh, it's Mammoth Pools. Yeah, it's Mammoth Pools, but it's super smoky up there. You know, you're probably not gonna be able to get up there. So as soon as they said Mammoth Pools and they confirmed that, we just dropped a point on the map. And it worked out to where the valley that led up to it was less active. The fire was a little bit less active, a little bit more spotty. It wasn't a solid wall of fire, but it was a little spotty, you know, and we're like, well, there's nobody else out here now. Let's try to go through that spot there and we'll see what's on the other side. Like we're thinking, if it's already burned back there, then there's probably gonna be less smoke, you know, and so we went through a gap there, and sure enough, there was the biggest thing. Once we were on the other side into the burn, it was just that there was no contrast. There was everything was black, you know, on the black backdrop, and you can see that there was that remaining smoke from it all getting kind of sucked up together, and the visibility dropped pretty significantly. So we just slowed down, you know, I think we were down to like 50 or 60 knots there for a little bit. But what we quickly what's that?
Were you in formation with the Black Hawk that Kip was flying?
No, the Hawk was about a mile or two behind us. They saw us circling, and so they kind of stayed out and circled too. But once we had all the other traffic was gone, we communicated with them, and they were following us in. But they were a mile back or so. But I think they tightened up because of visibility.
Yeah.
So so they were behind us, and visibility was dropping, and they kind of started losing sight on us a little bit. But what we realized pretty quickly was that all the leftover burning vegetation, after the main wall had gone through, you still had all this burning vegetation in the background, and all of that was illuminating all the terrain. And even so much like stuff that you wouldn't be able to see with the naked eye, like some of the hot embers, but it wasn't visible flame, and there was a picture out there that I think maybe it was the video of the approach, but you can see what I'm talking about on the landscape behind, like that just like Ben, you know, like when you look up at the stars with your naked eye and then you put goggles on and look at the stars, kind of that same effect. Like on that video, you can see like some of the hilltops that are outlined in these embers and vegetation and whatnot, but you stick the goggles on, you can just see so much more. So and that's really what
you were flying up into the mountains that had all just gotten burned over, and you're using your goggles. I feel like with that amount of fire and the IR energy, it would just shut the goggles down. You know, it's like when you see one big fire, you can see it from a million miles away under the goggles, and it kind of just shuts everything down around it. But if everything was on fire, were you able to view everything?
So yeah, there were a couple. So the smaller fires, like the smaller, like one tree, one bush, the little pin pricks that, you know, all over the mountains, those were fine, right? But there was a couple times we were making some turns and a more active part, like a bigger fire was there. Yeah, it was shutting the goggles down.
Jeez.
But luckily those kind of off to the sides a little bit. Yeah. So as long as you didn't like turn it that way, then it was okay. But I did notice a couple times that the goggles shut down. In fact, now you just reminded me, I got to change out the batteries on my primary pack. I got the red light almost immediately. Oh, geez. So, but yeah, and so then our biggest concern, once we realized that it was doable, our biggest concern was the wires, because on the sectional there was was a set of big wires that was crossing in front of us a couple times, and we're like, we're not gonna be able to see those. So.
What do you mean by wires?
The high tension wires, right? So they're already hard enough to see, especially under goggles. But now that everything's burned and there's no contrast, like they're absolutely invisible. You know?
Ooh.
So
Scary.
we just tried, normal stuff. Tried to find a pole. Tried to, and a lot of times we didn't even see them until after crew member said we were clear. So
wow.
But we just flew a little bit higher. We're like right at the top of the ceiling, and like, all right, I want to get as high as possible over this spot while we're crossing these wires on the map. And luckily we had the room to do that.
Did you ever flip the goggles up and try and use the visible searchlight and then be like, no, were you in a giant cloud of smoke that you could see through with the goggles, but not without?
Yeah. So we, you know how the white searchlight, it penetrates a little bit more. Like we had the white searchlight on almost the whole time, even though we were under the goggles.
Wow.
And but we had it aimed down mainly so that the hawk could see where we were. Right.
Okay.
So they were behind us, and just like overseas, we have that searchlight on so that you can see each other a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So we did that. So it wasn't like refracting in front of us, but there was one time, I turned it on, moved it up a little bit, and we're like, no, this isn't gonna work. So I moved it back down. It was in fact, on the last trip back, when we were out of the fire, and I noticed, how like rain looks in the under goggles when you're flying through a rain. I noticed that only was ash, and so I'm like, well, you guys want to get back at warp speed? So I kind of tipped it up so that you had that warp speed look.
Wow.
So how many different flights did you guys go back and forth? And then how many people in total? I saw that one photo where it looked like you had like 50 people packed into one helicopter.
Yeah. So we did 3 trips, and on that trip that you're talking about, we had 102 passengers.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was nuts. Like we didn't even know we had that many. We were sitting on the ground, and we were just telling the guys, the flight engineers, like, hey, just let us know when you're ready. Like load as many as you can, but just let us know when you're ready. And they just kept packing them in, and I couldn't see. I looked back, there was a dude standing in the, I couldn't even see behind that. And so, and Ben knows, we were like, hey, how many people you got? And usually they're like, oh, we got, 33, we got this many, and they're counting as they're going in, but they stopped counting. They lost track, they're like, hey, we don't know. They kind of looked over everybody's heads, and they're like, we think it's like 75 or 80. We're like, okay, cool. So we put in those numbers into the performance stuff. We're like, all right, that's not much more than we did before. We know this is doable. Cool deal. Let's do it. We had expected, about 85% torque to hover. We picked up off the ground at like 93, 94, something like that. And
what was the altitude?
3,300.
Oh, that's not
3,300, 41 degrees.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it hovered. Yeah. But you could almost immediately tell me that sucker, it was just shaking. And to climb out, it took 103. There was one little reflex shot of it went 103, brought it back down to 99. But we found out that if you go in and out of the, that value that it screams torque at you, torque.
95, yeah. Torque.
Yeah, yeah. You go in and out of that too fast, it like the system gets confused, and it'll go from the normal like tempo of torque to torque, because it was like doubling up for some reason. It was really, really annoying.
It's really annoying.
But it was like that. We were there for the entire climb out, probably 5 to 7 minutes.
Wow.
And so Brady, I remember he was saying afterwards that he had never been in a situation where he had max torque pulled. It was trying to accelerate and was descending still. So it was straight up hat stuff, where you getting through that ETL and descending a little bit first, and before you come back up. I don't think we knew we were super heavy. I don't think we realized how heavy and probably over gross we were until we couldn't get to the max climb.
Yeah.
airspeed.
Yeah, I was
So
about to ask
we
the
were
capacity
coming out
you
at
guys
like,
could usually hold, but it sounds like you were pretty much at it.
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, normal is 33 people. So,
Oh, wow. Almost tripled it.
yeah. So, you know, we've got this max power applied. We're in the top of the 10-minute, almost a contingency power. I think a couple times we went into contingency power. And there was a couple times I had to like stop. No, we really can't pull anymore. Like we're going to get the next timer on, you know, and,
Right.
and the climb rate was only like 200, 300 feet per minute. And so I was telling Brady, like, hey, we need to get up to max climb, you know, or else we're not going to get out of these mountains, you know. And so we'd get up to 50 knots. And he's like, well, I'm trying, but the CGI is pegged. And so that CGI was the measure stresses in the rotor system. It was pegged out in the red. I'm like, oh, crap. So, and you could feel it for sure. So we had to, I think we got to like 60 knots for a second. And then as we climbed out, we had to stay at like 55 knots until we were able to get over the mountains to start descending again. And then we were able to speed up again.
Wow.
But yeah, dude, it was nuts.
So you guys left Stockton, went to Fresno, got gas, and then heard from the sheriff for CAL FIRE? Or you went straight there?
No, we left Stockton, went straight there. In fact, we had a water bucket on board the aircraft, and when we got the word, nope, go straight to the incident, we just pushed the water bucket out and took off. I mean, I'm sure the guys at Stockton were pissed off because there was a water bucket, 2 gators, and a mattress just hanging out on the ramp.
Oh, at Stockton on the flight line?
So yeah, we went. Yeah. So we went straight to the incident, and then when we got first lift, that's when we fueled up.
Oh, okay. Wow. So you didn't know where you were going, who you were working for, what call signs or radio frequencies. You just went.
We just went. We knew Mammoth Pools. So that was we knew 30 families at Mammoth Pools. Okay, I found it on a map, and off we went. But we knew what was unknown, right? We knew some of the unknown, like the fire unknown. We're like, hey, I don't know air attack freak. I don't know TFR freak. I don't know any of this stuff. So that's luckily I just went through the Chris Renner School of TDFM 9000.
Yeah.
So I was pretty proficient in that. Yeah. So I jammed in, you know, Sacramento, and they helped out tremendously in order to get us the info we needed. And we ended up with like 3 different frequencies, and we finally got a hold of air attack after right at about the 12-mile ring. We got a hold of air attack, and he cleared us in and everything. And
yeah.
And that's when, you know, now we got through that part of confusion, and then we just got into another piece of confusion where everybody's trying to see how all these pieces were going to fit together. You know?
And that was the first day that fire started, right?
I think so. I'm not exactly sure. I want to say it started like maybe later in the night on the 4th.
Oh.
But I'm not sure. But that was basically, yeah, it was like 5,000 acres or something like that when we started.
Yeah.
But by the time we got up there, it was already at like 36,000 acres.
Wow. So you guys landed on a boat ramp, and people just came from every direction towards the helicopter, or what? Was there any type of orderly stuff going on?
No, there was nobody except like civilians out there. And we kind of tried to, you know, blink our lights like, hey, yeah, come over here type of thing. But we had landed on this boat ramp. It was like a 12 or 13 degree slope, nose high slope.
Wow.
In the dust, all the sand and whatnot. And, but you figure all these people are stranded. They want to get out of there. They know, go to the helicopter, you know. So luckily they really cooperated with what George and Cameron wanted to do, was that was prioritize the injured and whatnot.
Oh, good.
And there was one lady, all they did, they said all they could describe was she had really red hair. She was like taking a little bit of control, you know, and was helping get the word out and move people. So yeah, we were able to get a lot out on that first trip. But then like everybody was kind of scattered down that beach or whatever. And I think for some of them, it probably took a little while to make the trek over to the boat ramp, you know. So by the time the Hawk landed, I think they got like 20 people or whatever. But as time went on, you could see more and more people were showing up.
Do you know
when
how
we left
long
that first
you were
time? I'm looking around
that
like, okay, I
first
see
time?
onesie, twosie. No, it seemed like a while, but
Yeah.
I don't have a frame of reference.
And what are
It could have
you?
been 20 minutes. I think that second left, it was a half.
Yeah. So you're sitting up front with Brady, and the guys are loading in the back, and like, what are you thinking? Like, how am I going to get out of here with all these people on board the aircraft? I guess it was good. You were low on gas.
Yeah, we were low on gas on that one. Brady did some calculations, right? And we knew we had the power because we had a good accurate number on that first one. And so we kind of plugged that in. We're like, okay, there's some children back there. They're not as heavy as adults, but there's some pretty big adults back there. So yeah, we just did it at 200 pounds per person.
Okay.
And it came out as good. So we knew we were going to have the power to do it on that first one. We had decided that we were just going to go out the same way we came in because we knew that was good. The Hawk, when we were flying up that valley that first time, the Hawk lost sight of us. And it just so happens that, and this is pure coincidence, it just so happens it was the same time I'm starting to think about an inadvertent IMC plan. And so I called Kip on the radio. I'm like, hey, just in case I go inadvertent IMC, this is my plan, right? Like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to climb up to 11,000. I'm going to turn around. And so all he heard was inadvertent IMC, and about the same time he lost sight of us. So he immediately turned around. He goes, we're out. I'm like, no, it's just a plan. We're just trying to make the plan. He's like, well, we're already out. So they had turned around and were like, and they found another way in. They went out towards the east and they came in from the east. So we all met up at the lake. We were still loading when they showed up, and they were just hovering behind us. We're like, hey, we're right behind you. It's your 6. You got plenty of room. Take as much time as you need. When you leave, just go to the left, make a left turn out of the lake and come around, and we'll come in behind you, type of thing. So really good coordination there. And so we left him on the ground, and then as we're coming back, I'm thinking to myself, well, shoot, nobody's tracking Kip now. So we climbed up a little bit higher so that we could still keep some radio contact with them, and but we ended up losing him. I just wanted to make sure he was okay on his egress, and he finally was able to get a call to ops. We were able to hear him talking to ops, so that was a good moment when we knew he was safe.
How long did Air Attack stay up? Did they stay up all night while you guys were pulling people out of Mammoth Pools? And how far was the flight from Mammoth Pools back to the Fresno airport?
They left right at cutoff. So when we showed up, they did. In fact, John Williamson was the Air Attack, and he was at the end of his fuel cycle, so he swapped out with the guy that I heard them do their Air Attack brief. Yeah, their handoff brief. So he was out as we're trying to call. So the new guy only stayed around for about a half hour or so, and he was gone at sunset, or half hour at sunset or whatever. So it was just us out there, and we were coordinating with the ops branch chief, the guy on the ground. There was nobody out there. And then the flight back was, on the first trip, I want to say it was like 19 minutes, 17 minutes, something like that. But that was at, normal speed. Yeah. That second trip took about 10 to 12 minutes longer because we had to go so slow.
Oh, wow. Oh, so the second lift was the one where you had 102 people?
Yeah.
Oh, probably because they saw you come the first time. You left for an hour, came back, and everyone's ready to roll.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They had time to get to the boat ramp at that point.
Yeah.
But we had to set, so because we didn't know how heavy we were on that one, right? So we knew that, oh my God, that was a lot of power we just used, and that was freaking hairy. And so once we got back into the cruise, we're in the descent into Fresno, we're thinking, we're doing it before landing, right? We're like, performance considerations.
Roll on.
If I know,
Roll on.
you know, like, so we were like, okay, we're just gonna do a roll on. Like, instead of going to do to Charlie 10, you know, we'll just take the runway. We'll do the full roll on. We'll use up all the space we need, and that.
It's so a roll on is landing in the Chinook is where you kind of land like an airplane, like you touch down with forward airspeed with the back wheels, and then you use aerodynamic braking to stop you, and you can do a very safe and easy landing with that forward airspeed using way less power than if you had to hover the helicopter into
slowly
like a tight spot. Yeah. Gotcha. So it's just a safe thing to do if you don't have a huge power margin.
Wow.
So you did that, Joe?
So we briefed, okay, we're going to do the roll on 29 right, you know, and then Powell was like, that's going to be a problem because we can't close the ramp. So apparently they had like people kind of on the ramp, you know, and up as much as they can, but they were kind of like this up at the ceiling, you know, and
yeah.
So the ramp was still kind of level, and we're like, what? Yeah, no, we can't bring the ramp up. And I was like, okay, well, that's gonna suck when we scrape this on the ground, you know. And so we ended up just doing the hats, you know, we kind of a normal helicopter approach, right? So came down into IGE and just used up almost the whole runway just to slow down very slowly while we were in IGE. Wow. Doing that type of stuff, and it worked out. And you know, at 3,000 feet lower in elevation, a lot cooler at that time. So we got a lot better performance on the way in than we did on the way out. But we just wanted to be extra sure, you know.
Yeah, I bet.
So I know the fire's up to about like 170,000 acres now. Have you been going back and forth the last few days?
Last few days we've been kind of grounded because of the weather. We've been sending up. Been too smoky. That high pressure kind of took over a few days ago, and it just destroyed the ability for us to fly. Now and then, because I will get one weather report here at Fresno, but then and it will seem okay. I'll send a Hawk or the Lakota up, and they'll get, you know, a few miles out, and they're like, nope, turn around, and came back. So we were watching the weather pretty close, and I know you're doing your thing on the weather, right? And
doing little wildfire forecast videos.
Yeah, so we got really lucky on, I want to say, Monday night, because on Saturday we did this thing. When we came in on Sunday, the smoke had kind of come in, and we started getting a lot of requests for more evacuations, but we couldn't get there. We tried a few times on Sunday and on mainly on Sunday. We launched a few times to try to get to a few more places, and we got within like a mile of like Huntington Reservoir in China Peak, and we just hit a wall of smoke and couldn't get by when we were doing that one low level. We tried every direction you could think of. We went from the north, from the west, from the south, from the east, and we just couldn't get through it. And that's when that San Diego fire kind of kicked off too, and a lot of that smoke was getting brought up the valley, brought up the Sierras, and it was just really affecting our ability to get in. So we started looking at the prog charts, and we're like, hey, we think that on Monday, well, actually Tuesday morning, we saw that the low pressure was kind of moving off, the high pressure was coming in, and the isobars were really tight in between, right over us, around 2 a.m. So we're like, well, this chart says it's going to be 100 miles. This weather change is going to be 100 miles north of us at midnight, and it's going to be 100 miles south of us at like 4 a.m. So we're like, well, we'll shoot for 2. And we got lucky enough that actually worked out. That high pressure was kind of moving in, some winds kicked up, and at that point we were able to go. We tried to go underneath it again, and it was a no-go. So then we climbed up to about like 10,000, 11,000 feet, and went over the smoke as that high pressure was kind of pushing it pushing that mast down, and we were able to get over. And we're like, oh my gosh, I can see China Peak, I can see the reservoir, I can see, you know, Edison, I can see all these places. And so the Hawk, they had launched just a couple minutes behind us, and we're like, hey, we can see all these places, you know, bring in the cavalry, you know. And so the Navy guys took off, and that was the night that everybody worked well into sunlight, you know, 6 a.m. and I think the Navy guys finally quit at like 9 a.m. or something like that when the day shift took over. But yeah, so yeah, we were able to get into the 4 little points that we had on the map that we just been waiting to get to, and then the rest of that day, the day shift just worked getting those people out. And it was funny because as that high pressure kind of took over the region, and so as the day heated up, apparently they were having to go higher and higher and higher to get over that smoke wall, as everything kind of expanded, you know. And it was finally like, I want to say 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and they were at 13.5 and still going, you know, IMC, you know. So they had to quit, but I think they got everybody out during that push.
So my advisor, Dr. Craig Clements, was telling me about that just gigantic pyrocumulonimbus cloud that happened that basically reached all the way up into the stratosphere. Were you flying any of the days when the thing was active?
Yeah, I saw that satellite view. It casting a shadow over like the entire western U.S. It was crazy.
How long was that period? You were flying
under?
Well,
I'm sorry. I think we were more flying around it. At least on that night. Like, I don't think anybody wanted to be underneath that thing.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that. But like when we got into some of the clear air. Go ahead.
I want to know how many fire tornadoes you saw.
I think we caused one. When we were hovering at the boat ramp, I do remember seeing one little whirly come up from a bush, you know, but nice. We didn't see any inside of it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll let you guys go. Thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about this. Huge thank you for the work you guys do. I know these fires have gotten worse and worse recently, so it's pretty awesome we have guys like you helping us.
I appreciate it. Yeah, we're hoping for another break here today or tomorrow.
Yeah, need it. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, you bet. Holt.